Welcome to Bible in a Year, Day 256. Today we read Daniel 1 through 3. While the book of Joel that we read yesterday was likely written when Israel and Judah had returned from exile, the exact timeline is not specified. Today in Daniel, we rewind in Bible history as the time of Daniel is specified. I mention this mostly because this is supposed to be a chronological reading of the events in the Bible, yet whoever put this plan together didn't exactly collate the timelines in all of the books. So we rewind to the reign of Jehoiakim, king of Judah, who is king more than a decade prior to Judah going into exile to Babylon. However, during Jehoiakim's reign, Babylon is in the process of defeating Judah. I want to read the first few verses of Daniel to give you context of when Daniel and some of his peers ended up in Babylon. Daniel chapter 1, verse 1 through 7. In the 3rd year of the reign of Jehoiakim, king of Judah, Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, came to Jerusalem and besieged it. And the Lord gave Jehoiakim, king of Judah, into his hand. Then the king, Nebuchadnezzar, commanded Ashpenaz, his chief eunuch, to bring some of the people of Israel, both of the royal family and of the nobility, youths without blemish, of good appearance, and skillful in all wisdom, endowed with knowledge, understanding, learning, and competent to stand in the king's palace and to teach them the literature and language of the Chaldeans. The king assigned them a daily portion of the food that the king ate and the wine that he drank. They were to be educated for 3 years, and at the end of the time, they were to stand before the king. Among these were Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, Azariah, of the tribe of Judah. And the chief of the eunuchs gave them new names. Daniel he called Belteshazzar, Hananiah he called Shadrach, Mishael he called Meshach, and Azariah he called Abednego. These 4 men were faithful and obedient to God, down to the detail of not eating food that was considered unclean. They did not turn from God's commands to blend into this pagan culture. As a result, verse 17 through 20, God gave them skill in all literature and wisdom, and Daniel had understanding in all visions and dreams. At the end of the time, when the king had commanded that they should be brought in, the chief of the eunuchs brought them before Nebuchadnezzar, and the king spoke with them. And among all of them, none was found like Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah. Therefore, they stood before the king, and in every matter of wisdom and understanding about which the king inquired of them, he found them 10 times better than all the magicians and enchanters that were in his kingdom. Chapter 2 opens with King Nebuchadnezzar having a dream. He won't tell his typical interpreters what the dream is. The Chaldeans are confused, saying no one can know what the king dreamed. They wanted him to tell the dream, and they would invent an interpretation. Verse 12, the king was furious and commanded that all the wise men of Babylon be destroyed. So the decree went out, and the wise men were about to be killed. And who did they seek out to kill these people? Daniel. But instead of killing them, Daniel requests a meeting with the king and requested that his friends plead with God for mercy. God gave Daniel a dream, and Daniel praises God. Daniel goes before the king. Verse 27, no wise men, enchanters, magicians, or astrologers can show to the king the mystery that the king has asked, but there is a God in heaven who reveals mysteries. Daniel proceeds to tell the king what he had dreamed and then explained the meaning. As a result, in verses 47 through 49, the king answered and said to Daniel, "Truly, your God is God, the God of gods, the Lord of kings, and the revealer of mysteries, for you have been able to reveal this mystery." Then the king gave Daniel high honors and many great gifts, and made him ruler over the whole province of Babylon, and chief prefect over all the wise men of Babylon. Daniel made a request of the king, and he appointed his friends Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego over the affairs of the province of Babylon. But Daniel remained in the king's court. In chapter 3 is the famous recording of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego being rescued by God from the fiery furnace. If you aren't familiar with this miracle, make sure you read this full chapter. These servants of God were unwilling to disobey God, even though disobeying was punishable by death. Yet God made his name known. Verses 28 through 30. Nebuchadnezzar said, "Blessed be the God of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, who has sent his angel and delivered his servants, who trusted in him and set aside the king's command and yielded up their bodies rather than serve and worship any god except their own God. Therefore I make a decree. Any people, nation, or language that speaks anything against the God of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego shall be torn limb from limb, and their houses laid in ruins, for there is no other God who is able to rescue in this way." Then the king promoted Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego in the province of Babylon. Come back tomorrow as we continue through this exciting book of Daniel with chapters 4 through 6. Have a blessed day.